he had developed a formula, which is a very bad thing to do, because a formula means that you treat all of your different subjects with all of the different lighting conditions and all of the multitude of variations that you'll come across in your career, your work in drawing and painting portraits. It means you treat them all exactly the same way. Oh, what a Greek tragedy that is. Because why are we doing art? It's for the gorgeous variety, all the different kinds of light, all the different kinds of subjects, all the exploration. And to treat all of those the same, what a crime. So this is something, having struggled with it myself, and for the entire previous decade, seen students struggle with the same kind of thing, I was aware of what the problem was and what the solution was. The solution being not to artificially soften edges, but to be aware that we have a tendency to add contrast that isn't really there, to know that, and so to back off on it, and to get that naturalism that we're really seeing. And so I brought this to his attention, I pushed, I cajoled, but this was a habit that for him had been developing over the past many years. Many years. He had his process down, he had his comfort zone, and at that point I really started to wonder why he was taking the class. Because he had so much talent, so much potential. I was very concerned that the class was an opportunity for him to overcome this particular project, and he fought me tooth and nail on it. So much so that he finally said to me, because I razzed him about it, he finally said, he kind of got frustrated with me, and he said, look, this is just the way that I draw. And so at that point, I backed off. I let him do what he was going to do, and it's absolutely fine. It's our career, it's our approach. We have to make our own decisions on how we're going to approach this. But I want to take the opportunity to warn all of you away from this, because I stumbled across his website recently, and he's doing work that's not bad. It's not bad work, but every single painting is handled the same way, with artificially softened edges, regardless of the kind of light that he's using. And there's also a postscript to this story, an epilogue. A couple of months back, as a matter of fact, I had a student come to me and ask about the contrasts in a drawing. For instance, in the drawing that we're doing here, take a look at the photograph of the model and look at her cheek on the right-hand side. And it's in light, but there's a little bit of a cast shadow underneath it. In that line that comes off of the nostril there, and that line that curves around the mouth, there's a little bit of a shadow in that area. That's one of those areas that tends to feel really dark to us. We look at it and it's surrounded by light and we feel that it's very dark, and so we tend to overdo the contrast. That's one of those typically problematic areas. And so the solution is you're aware to not overdo the contrast, and you're aware that there's lots of bounce light in that shadow because it has light around it, and you don't overdo it. You don't make it too dark accidentally, so as to make her look too old, to make the drawing look too harsh. And so that's the proper solution. So the student who came to me asking about contrast, she said, for instance, I'm asking you this because I had this other teacher, and they said when you have an area like that, for instance, a little band of shadow falling across the cheek, you should just leave it out. You should just blend it out so that that shadow doesn't actually appear in your drawing. And my response was, what? Leave it out entirely? No, of course not. What would be the point of that? You just control it. You give it the proper value. You get the proper amount of bounce light going into it. You give it the proper edge, and then it will sit beautifully in there. You don't just artificially take it out because it looks too harsh and you don't know why. And then a light bulb went on, and I said, what was the name of that teacher? Guess who? That's right. This other artist had taken to teaching some classes, and I'm not saying that everything they had to teach was not helpful. It may have been a very helpful class in many ways. I'm not here to criticize anyone. I'm not using any names because that's not what I'm all about. But I want our work to be better, and I want us to find the best solutions that we can find. And so just because someone is the teacher doesn't automatically mean that everything that they say is correct, as in this case. And so always evaluate, make sure you understand why. If the teacher says, well, this thing should be this way, don't accept it at face value. Make sure you understand the principle behind why it should be that way and what might the exceptions be, so that you do not develop a formula, so that you do not have this list of, well, so-and-so Richard Schmidt is my favorite artist and he said to do this, this, and that, and so that's exactly what I'm going to do, without knowing the principle behind why he said to do that, because that leads to a formula, that leads to a rote approach, and that leads to an inflexibility that will not give you the artistry that you have the potential for. Okay.